A large part of me doesn't want to talk about this, but there's a big part of me that does. I feel like I can offer some advice and some wisdom, but this subject, it can be happy, it can be painful, it can be confusing, it can be annoying. It can be so many things. But hopefully, maybe I can help a little bit. Hey guys, it's Melinda. Welcome back to my channel. As you can see, we are cuddled up with our blanket. Go ahead and grab yourself a warm cup of tea, something nice and cozy like a blanket or a big fluffy sweater, and cuddle up because we need to talk. There's a part of me that doesn't want to talk about this, but then there's a really big part of me that does. There's a part of me that just wants to leave it. But I've had experience with this, and in my 10 years of being married, 11 years of being together, I have learned a lot. So today we are going to be talking about your in-laws. Our in-laws. In-laws are a tricky subject, but before I get started, I want to just give you a little bit of a disclaimer. I will not be discussing any information such as anything that has happened between me and my in-laws or what my relationship status is with my in-laws, because that's to protect their privacy. It's none of their business. It's nobody else's business, or I guess it is their business, but I'm not going to put their business out there. I'm not going to put our relationship status out there. But what I can do is offer you advice on how to maybe helpfully improve your relationship with your in-law or continue your relationship with your in-laws. So yeah, that being said, that's my little disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. I cannot diagnose anybody. All I can give you is what I have, and that's knowledge on the subject. So the first thing that we are going to talk about when it comes to your in-laws is boundaries. Boundaries are important. Boundaries are very, very important. Boundaries allow somebody to say, this is as far as you can go, and you may not cross this line. This is the line that I am drawing around me, around my family, around my husband, and you may not cross that line. You may not ask me this question. You are not entitled to this information, those kinds of things. And boundaries are very, very important. Once you blur the lines of boundaries, you can get yourself into a lot of big messes. So we do not want to blur the line of our boundaries. So how do we do that? You first need to establish a boundary. So talk with your spouse and say, hey, what are our boundary rules? Say I'm really getting to know your in-laws, or your parents, I'm really getting to know them, and I just want to know, they asked me this question, is this too far? It's not your in-laws, like business, what your finances are, what you make, your job, how it's not your in-laws' business unless they are paying for you to live, which 9 times out of 10 they're probably not. But unless they are paying for you to live, it is none of their business your finances. It is none of their business how your relationship is going. It is none of your business the disagreements and arguments that you have with your spouse. It's none of your business it's none of their business how you choose to raise your kids. This is your family. Okay? Yes, family back home, they're important too. But this family that you've created, they come first. Actually, God comes first and they come second. Boundaries are very, very important. Once you have sat down with your spouse and said, these are the things that we choose not to discuss with our in-laws, with even some of our friends, whatever those may be. Another thing that you can do, and this is really, really important, okay, so listen up. I don't care if you think you are best friends with your in-law. I don't care if you think that you can tell them anything. I don't care if you think that, I don't know, if you think that it's okay to tell them something, if you think that it's okay to, if there's a disagreement, if you think it's okay to bring it up, because you need to remember, these are your in-laws, and while they are part of your family, they are not your parents, they are not your best friend, they are not your spouse. This is part of setting those boundaries, okay, guys? I don't care if you think you are best friends with your in-laws. If there is an issue, go to your spouse and let your spouse handle it. I am speaking from experience, please. This is one of the biggest advice that I can give you, but it's also one of the ones that I find most people just ignore. They think, oh, well, me and my in-law are really good friends. We can, I can tell her about that. I can tell him about that. We can talk about those things. It's okay. There won't be anything. It'll be okay. But part of those boundaries that you're setting says, don't go to your in-laws if you have an issue with them. If you're upset because somebody said something, go to your spouse and tell your spouse, hey, I was really upset because your dad said this to me today. And it just really, I felt really judged. I felt really undermined, whatever the case may be. And have your spouse talk to them. What if my spouse doesn't talk to them? What if your spouse doesn't talk to them? What if your spouse says, I don't really want to start stuff, but you feel like, my feelings are really hurt. Could you just at least say something? Here's the deal, guys. Your in-laws gave birth to the person that you love. Your in-laws raised that person. Your in-laws had a vision of how that person would grow up one day. They hoped and they prayed and they cared and they loved and they kissed and they tucked him into bed. They love your spouse, okay? That's okay. That you want them to love your spouse. But sometimes, I don't know how I want to say this. Sometimes you have to let your spouse handle those situations, okay? So you go to your spouse and you say, hey, your dad said this to me today. It kind of made me feel really bad. And your spouse goes, I don't want to start anything. And you're like, but you can't just say something. I think at that point you really need to sit down. Now, speaking from a Christian standpoint, in my household, my husband is head of the household. And so typically his decisions are the last made decisions. And no, that does not mean that I'm not feminist or that I'm like being ran over. That doesn't mean that I'm not included in these decisions. That does not mean that. So please don't come at me with that, because it does not mean that at all. I'm still included in those decisions, but my husband makes the final decision. So at that point, if something is said and you can let it go and your spouse wants to let it go, let it go. Do your best to let it go. Do your best. Pray for that person. Do your best to let it go. If it continues and becomes an issue, then you need to sit down with your spouse and you need to say, listen, I know you don't want to start stuff, but this is happening over and over and over again, and I'm being taken advantage of. I'm being hurt. My feelings are, I don't feel good. I don't want to go over there. I don't want to see them. Talk to your spouse. If your spouse still doesn't do anything, then I would really honestly at that point consider some kind of therapy, because as your spouse is made to protect you, to love you, to bring you to God. Your spouse is made to care for you, and, protect you. You're his family now, or her family, whatever. And his number one priority is to ensure that his spouse is healthy, happy, protected, taken care of. And if somebody is abusing that, then it needs to be spoken about. Now, say your husband does go to that person. He goes to his dad. He says, Dad, you really upset Melinda today. And again, I'm using these are not real scenarios. I'm just making them up as I go. They're not based on my in-laws. I am not going to put any information out there against my in-laws or for my in-laws because, again, that's none of your business. I think that's an invasion of their privacy, so I won't speak about it. I'm just making up these scenarios. So say your husband or your wife goes to their parent and they say, hey, you said this the other day. It really upset my wife. It really upset my husband. I think maybe we should not say that anymore. So then at that point, it is up to your spouse and their parent to talk about it. Okay. I am sure you are all imagining the issues that can arise coming out of that situation. I think that there could be finger pointing. I think that there could be blame. I think that there could be all kinds of issues that arise from bringing up hurtful information that maybe your spouse had to talk to their parent about. What happens if that parent comes back and says, well, your husband has been leaving me out of the family. Your husband has not let me have the children. Your husband has done this or that or this or that, and I'm hurt too. At that point, I feel like it's necessary for all of you to sit down, to voice your concerns. Hi, Bruce. To voice your concerns and, try to work something out. You have to be adult about it. There's no reason to yell. You don't want to put your spouse in the middle of anything. You don't want your spouse to be stuck right here with his parents over here and his wife and family over here, because that's not a good place for your spouse to be in. That's not fair to your spouse. So, your spouse needs to help in making that call. Your spouse needs to help in saying, okay, well, I've noticed this behavior in you. You've noticed this behavior in me. Hey, let's see if we can work something out. Let's see if we can, could you apologize for what you said? Do you maybe see that this was wrong? Those things. And if he feels that it's necessary or she feels that it's necessary, I just keep saying he because I think of my husband, but if they feel that it's necessary, then maybe all four of you can get together, his parents and you and your husband and your spouse could get together, sit down and talk out your issues. Talk about how you feel. Talk about what made you feel that way. And when you're doing that, you need to take in what your in-laws are saying. If your in-laws are saying, well, I feel like I don't get to see the kids enough, your first instinct should not be, well, your first instinct needs to stay quiet. Just shut up. Shut up. Don't say anything at all. Because what you need to do at this point is you need to sit down by yourself and you need to think, is she maybe right? Am I maybe not bringing the kids over as often? Or am I maybe leaving them out? Or are the kids maybe spending the night all the time at your parents and not their parents? Or, are the kids, maybe they just, whatever the case may be. You need to take a hard, honest look at yourself. I'm going to say that again. You need to take a hard, honest look at yourself, because sometimes it could be you. Okay? That's important to remember. Sometimes it could be you. You cannot jump right off of the boat and run your mouth because you're going to sink. Okay? You're not going to make things better. So once you have sat down and you have prayed and you have thought over this situation and you've been looked at it really honestly and you've asked your husband about it and how he feels about it, and he says, you know what? Maybe we have accidentally just kind of left them out, or we forget them a little bit more, or the kids don't see them as often, but it wasn't intentional. So at that point, you go to your spouse, or your spouse needs to go to his parents and say, hey, look, you know, we realized, we sat down and we talked and we realized, yeah, maybe we are kind of leaving you out, but it wasn't intentional. We apologize. Can we move forward? Easy enough. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen that much. Because what you do is you open your mouth and you run your mouth and you call names and you get on Facebook and you make this big tirade, and that's not okay. You still have to respect your in-laws, okay? You still have to respect your in-laws. Now, say you sit back and you go, you know what? They see the kids just as often, and this is a two-way street, and why don't they ever call and come over? Then it's up to your in-laws to sit back and say, hey, you know what? You're right. Is it always going to happen this way, you guys? No, absolutely not. It is absolutely not going to happen this way, because some people just need to make the mistakes on their own, okay? Some people, you know, it's not going to end there. But there is a fight between in-laws and your spouses, and it's there for a reason. Let's not make it worse. It is a fact that more women have issues with their mother-in-law than those who do not. It is a scientifically proven fact. A mother and her son, or a mother and her daughter, have a bond, okay? They have a bond, and you need to remember that, okay? So, moving on. You've got your boundaries set, okay? You have learned to talk to your spouse if there's an issue, all right? So, always talk to your spouse. Let your spouse handle that issue. What if something really bad happens? Like, what if your spouse's parents go to your spouse and they say, hey, you're not good enough, or your wife's not good enough, your husband's not good enough, you know, they're not taking care of you properly, I just really see this. You know, there's just so many scenarios, but you have to let your husband, no matter what the degree is, no matter if his in-laws are saying, hey, you need to divorce that person, which in-laws, that's not okay. That's not okay, because in-laws, you need to remember that your child is married. He has, or she has, chosen to love somebody else. Okay? They have gone together, all right? And that does not mean that they stop loving you, in-laws, so listen up, all right? Your relationship with your child is going to change. Understand? Yes, Melinda, I understand. Your daughter or your son has gone off, and they have found a wife or a husband. They've gotten married. They have formed this little family. In the same sense that your daughter-in-law or son-in-law need to have respect for you, you need to have respect for them. I'm going to say that again, in-laws. You need to have respect for your daughter or son-in-laws. Okay? You have to set boundaries as well. You cannot cross boundaries. They cannot cross boundaries. Okay? This is all so important. You have to understand that your child has grown up and gone off into this world, and they're grown. They can make their own decisions now, but they have started a family, and right now that family is their number one. Does it hurt? I imagine. I'm not an in-law. My kids aren't old enough to have kids. My kids aren't going to have kids for a very, very long time, okay? Does it hurt? I imagine it hurts. I imagine it's a hard adjustment, you know, especially depending on different circumstances. You got teenage pregnancies, or maybe like unexpected pregnancies, or, you know, there's just so many issues that can arise in all of these scenarios, because it's not black and white. Nothing about any relationship you have is black and white. You have to work for your relationships. That goes for you, in-laws, and it goes for you, not in-laws. son and daughter-in-laws. So there are clear-cut boundaries. I feel kind of like I'm rambling. I'm not trying to do that. I've made notes here. But there are clear-cut boundaries, okay? Respect needs to be given on both sides. You can set boundaries by allowing your spouse to talk to your in-laws about any situation that arises. In-laws, if you have any situations that arise, you need to talk to your son or your daughter, okay? We've established boundaries that way, okay? In-laws, you need to learn to respect your son and daughter-in-laws, and daughter-in-laws, you need to learn to respect, and son-in-laws, you need to learn to respect your in-laws. That's just how it goes. These are the foundations for setting a good relationship on both sides with your in-laws. These are important. These are the very foundations that are going to hold your relationships together. Now, there's all kinds of scenarios you can get into. What if you get a divorce? You throw kids in the mix and it gets even worse. You know, there's just so much that can happen because, guys, you have taken one family and another family, and we have merged them together. One family believes in this, and one family does this. One family worships, you know, differently. One family does stuff differently. They have different ideals. They have different motivations. They live life a little bit differently than the family over here. And we have just smashed them all together, and we said, hey, get along. Doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. And you guys need to remember that taking two families and meeting them together is really harsh. Like, it's hard, you know? People are so different. And when you merge those things together, you have to learn to find a balance between boundaries, respect, and love. That's just how it is. So, on to my next thing. We've talked about boundaries, we've talked about respect, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about relationships with your in-laws. They are not your best friend. I said it. There, I said it. And I know some of you are going, but wait, I'm best friends with my mother-in-law. I'm best friends with my father-in-law. I get along with them just fine, and that's fantastic, but they are not your best friend. Not your best friend. You're having problems in your sex life? You don't go to your in-law. You don't say, hey, it's been a while. I'm struggling. You and your husband get into an argument over something? You do not absolutely go to your in-law and say, hey, we're really struggling with this. Because I guarantee what you're going to find is that they're going to side with your husband. So, say you were to go to your father-in-law and say, oh yeah, you know, you guys are sitting, you're out in the garage and you've got a beer in your hand, things are going great, you're listening to music, and you go, yeah, so me and your daughter, we were arguing again about this. She's just spending money left and right. Excuse me. You know what your father-in-law's gonna say? He's gonna say, well, maybe if you worked a little bit harder, maybe you just need a little bit more money. Maybe if you took better care of her, she wouldn't have to feel that way. You go to your mother-in-law and you say, me and your son have been having issues with how we want to raise the kids. Do we want to raise them this way? Do we want to raise them that way? And your mother-in-law is going to side with your husband. Your in-laws are not your best friends. I don't care what you think. Something is going to happen. That is part of those boundaries and that respect. Because first of all, if you have an issue with your spouse, who do you go to? You don't go to your best friend. You don't go to your sister or your brother. You don't go to your mom. You especially do not go to your parents. But you most certainly do not go to his parents. Because if you want to talk about lack of respect, that is lack of respect for him toward your spouse, toward his family, and toward your family. It is a lack of respect all around. Okay? Do not go to anybody else but your husband about any issues. Now, if it's something serious, go to your pastor. Maybe talk to a good friend who is unbiased and can kind of help you work through those. If it's something serious, if it's something that needs to be fixed and you feel like it's outside of the realm of what you two can do, go see a counselor. But don't you dare ever, guys, listen, do not ever go to your in-laws about any kind of problems that you have with your spouse. Boundaries have been crossed. Respect has been lost. And I guarantee the outcome's not going to be good, because it's going to blow up. It is going to hit the fan. All right? Guys, when you marry somebody, people say that you marry their family too. But that's not true. Yeah, you do become part of their family. Yeah, you do have to learn to live with them. But it is your spouse's job to take care of their side of the family. Okay? Marriage is difficult enough. It's difficult enough because, oh, you guys, I got married when I was 19, 20. I was pregnant. I didn't know my husband very long before I got pregnant. And if you want to talk about a clash of families, that's the perfect storm brewing for families to crash. I am just giving you what I know, my knowledge, and I am passing it on to you because, like I said, merging two families together is hard enough, but dealing with the circumstances inside, maybe, like I said, there was an unwanted pregnancy, or maybe not an unwanted pregnancy, but a surprise pregnancy. Maybe, you know, you're still really, really young. Maybe you haven't gone to college. This is not what your parents imagined for you, because your parents and your in-laws imagined for their child, and I know this to be true because I am a parent. They imagined, they laid in bed at night awake, wondering if they were raising you right. They laid in bed at night, sometimes crying, and prayed and hoped that as you grew older, you would continue to seek God, or you would go to school. You would get a good job. You would be with somebody for a while before you got married. And then you would have kids. They envisioned these things for you. They envisioned only the best for you. And so sometimes it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to be good enough for your in-laws. And that's not always the case. I'm not saying that's always the case. I am saying their in-laws imagined when they were little what their spouses would be like. Because I imagine that. I worry all the time. Is my son going to continue to follow God as he gets older? What if he changes his mind? Is he going to come back to God? What if, you know, my daughter, God forbid, gets pregnant in high school, which ain't gonna happen. It's my hope that my children find God-loving spouses. It's my hope that my children go to college. If they want to. They don't have to. Get a good job. Make their own way. Save their money. Be with somebody who respects them and treats them the way that they deserve to be treated. And your in-laws have thought about that too. And so in some cases, you may not fit what they imagined. But you know what? That's not your struggle. That's theirs. In-laws, listen to me. If you believe that your spouse married somebody that you didn't imagine that person would be like, you need to get over it. You need to get over it. Life isn't perfect. People are not perfect. The thing is, your child has gone out and they have found somebody who they feel respects them and loves them enough to marry them. Now, if it is a really big issue, if you see that your daughter is being abused or your son is being physically abused, mentally abused, manipulated, you need to bring that, you need to call that out. You need to say, hey, listen, you know, I've seen the bruises, I've seen the marks. There's been time in my relationship between my husband that I have been manipulated. There's been times in my relationship that I have been the bad person. But you know what? Because my husband loves me, he chose to stay with me because he knows that I can do better. In-laws, nobody's ever going to be perfect. You have to accept that. You have to get over what you imagined for your child, because nobody's going to fit that. I guarantee. You need to get over that. Marriage is a commitment between two people to love each other every single day, even when they don't like each other. Even when you kind of want to push them out of the car. Marriage, love is totally not what I ever thought it would be. It's not what I ever thought that it would be. I never knew that I could love somebody the way that I love my husband. I never knew that I could love somebody the way I love my kids. But my husband, man, you guys, despite his flaws, despite my flaws, it's every day that we get up and we stand united together to push each other to follow Christ, to raise our children to follow Christ. It's not easy because we are two different people and we have to learn to respect each other. And we have grown over the years. Oh my goodness, have we grown. I used to be really controlling when I was younger. And that is something that I have had to turn into a good quality. And we'll talk about some of that stuff later, but right now, I just want you to understand that yes, relationships with your in-laws can be really hard, really tricky, really sticky, really ugly, really just chaotic. But you need to remember respect, boundaries, rules, love. You need to remember those things. You need not to cross those things. You need to accept your in-laws for who they are. And spouses, you need to accept your in-laws for who they are. That was my cat. I thought it was something like oh, that was weird. It kind of freaked me out. Anyways. I think she knocked down the gate. Anyways, that was kind of creepy because I'm like home alone. I think we're okay. So yes, you need to follow respect. You need to set boundaries. You need to love your spouse. And yeah, you need to let your spouse handle those issues. And I think that that's going to give you a really good foundation for your relationships, for dealing with any kind of issues between you and your in-laws. Yeah, that's a really good foundation. So, you know, it's hard. Like I said, it's chaotic. It's annoying sometimes. But we love our spouses enough to handle that. We love our spouses enough to respect his parents, her parents, their siblings. And in-laws, you love your kid enough to respect your son and daughter-in-laws. Guys, it's not this easy. It's really not. I don't expect it to be perfect, but I just hope that some of this advice helps you because there are points in your life that you look back on things and you want to change them. But when you get into situations where, you know, you have to cut off an in-law, or you have to cut off a brother-in-law or a sister-in-law completely, that's hard, you guys, and it takes a lot, and it causes a lot of strain, and you never want to get to that area. I believe that God always wants us, even though God tells us to still love those people, just love them back here, you know, a little further away, a little further than that. Yeah, keep going. But I think ultimately he wants us to come together and to solve those issues and to be a family again. And you're not going to get anywhere if you think that your in-laws are your best friends. If you have a lack of respect, a lack of boundaries, and a lack of love. You don't want to be there, guys. Okay? I know this was a little bit heavy-handed. I know this was kind of a more video, but I think it was necessary. I think it's necessary to talk about these things. I think it's important to talk about these things because nobody told me. You know, nobody told me. You know, you go off into the world and you're not like, you know, nobody tells you like, hey, you need to have respect for these people. You know, nobody tells me those things. Nobody tells me the personalities that I'm going to be dealing with on my everyday life. You just gotta flow with it, guys, but you gotta make it work. It takes effort. Alright, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more, let me know. Tell me what you would like to see. Let me know in the comments. Have you established these relationship boundaries with your in-laws? Is there something else that you have done that has helped you a lot kind of balance that relationship? Let me know in the comments below. I want to know. I want to know. We could all use a little bit of help, right? I mean, I can still use those things, you know, to just, you know, everybody can use a little bit of advice. So if you have some more advice, please leave some in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Check out some of my other videos. This is a new page, so there's not too much on it. However, I do have a second page called Mindy Simmy. It is a page about playing The Sims, which is a life simulation game. So if you would like to check that out, please do so. It'll be in the description box down below. Like I said, you guys, this was a heavy video today, but it was necessary. So I'm going to talk to all of you later. Bye. Guys, I just wanted to pop back in here and say really fast that your in-laws are not your enemies. In-laws need to be loved and respected just like you do. So make sure that you take good care of your in-laws. Make sure that you take good care of your spouse, and hopefully you will receive that love in return. Bye.